Our next panel, Blockchain and the Decentralized World, will continue the conversation on the impact of blockchain in our economy and society. Decentralization set the stage for the unparalleled World Wide Web that we all know of today. It is also a central feature of blockchain technology. With decentralized system, we can fundamentally optimize our future economy and benefit society at large. Now, before we call upon our esteemed panelists to join us on stage, once again, an opportunity for you to be engaged to post your burning questions via slido.com. The event code, once again, is hashtag Deep Tech Summit, one word all joined together. And for our overseas delegates, you'll be happy to know that Wi-Fi is complimentary. Please search under Mice Hotspot. It gives me great pleasure to first invite our moderator for this panel, Emma Chui, Chief Executive Officer of Longhash Singapore. Can we give her a big warm welcome, please? Emma, it's always a pleasure seeing you. Thank you for joining us. And the same applause for Joseph Lubin, founder and ConsenSys, I beg your pardon, ConsenSys, and co-founder from Ethereum. Let's give him a big warm welcome, please. Joseph, pleasure seeing you again. Humayun Sheikh, Chief Executive Officer and founder for Fetch.AI, a big warm welcome as well. Humayun. Soeren Duvier, Managing Director, Asia Blockchain in Transport Alliance, or BiTA for short. Let's give him a big warm welcome, Soeren. Martin Lim, COO for Electrify. Martin, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure seeing you. And last but not the least, Meeta Vouk, Director for Singapore Research Center from IBM. Let's give Meeta a big warm welcome, please. Emma, it gives me great pleasure to hand the proceedings over to you. Once again, please be engaged. Just going to leave that one last time for our Slido and also the hashtag for everyone to be connected. With that being said, join me in giving our panel another big warm welcome, please. Thank you very much. Emma, over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, it's an honor to be here and moderating this panel. I noticed we've got a very, very diverse panel. We've got companies from energy sector, such as modding Electrify, which is a decentralized marketplace looking at disrupting energy distribution. And then we've got Meeta coming from as the director of IBM Research Center. She also used to be a chief data officer for the blockchain technology within IBM. We've got Soeren looking after the transport and logistics sector. We've got Humayun looking after the AI and blockchain intersection. And of course, Joseph really is a man that needs no introduction in the blockchain world. You know, ConsenSys is probably one of the fastest growing technology company within blockchain industry. And they're building developer tools, decentralized applications, and helping governments and enterprises trying to unleash the powers of Ethereum. So I'm super excited to be here. I have a lot of questions on blockchain, and I believe the crowd does too. So why don't we get started with, perhaps I should give the chance for each panelist to give a quick introduction and, why do you think decentralization is important for blockchain industry or for the particular verticals that you are in?
So decentralization, to me, is all about trust, as Don indicated very, very eloquently. Essentially, blockchain is a technology that is pioneering a trust infrastructure. You can make use of radically decentralized architectures to give people and organizations comfort that systems can be built, can foster collaboration, and can guarantee execution. So we're moving from a world of top-down command and control systems implemented by monarchs and governments, executed by people and institutions somewhat subjectively, to a world in which we can bring rule-based systems that are implemented in code, moving from essentially subjective manual trust to automated trust and guaranteed execution of those rule systems, either at the level of laws or at the level of contractual agreements or even at the level of treaties between nation states. And so the fact that blockchain technologies, if radically decentralized, can be virtually impossible to subvert, even if up to half of the actors on the system are malicious, is a new paradigm for how we can architect economic, social, and political systems.
That's very exciting. Anyone else wants to
So, sorry, I'll take a completely different take on the decentralization. And I think if you look at what's happening with technology, the granularity of things is kind of coming down right to the end. The data explosion, there is too much data. And in certain cases, centralization is now failing. So my take on that is that with the development and the explosion of data, development of new technology, sensors, microprocessor capabilities, we need to find a different way, and centralization is falling behind.
Would just give a brief introduction. My name is Soeren Duvier, and I started 25 years ago in Maersk, a shipping company from Denmark. And we saw earlier today that Denmark is almost as well played as Singapore. And my focus area is the logistics and supply chain sector that we saw the last speaker in a hologram addressing. A huge area, very old, hundreds of years old. And following a little bit up on age, the challenges there are three. It's a mindset, and it's a regulation, and it's standards. And that's something that the organization I represent, BiTA, addresses.
So the space we're in is energy, and for the longest time, energy's always been a centralized, centrally controlled thing. You've got your grid operators, your incumbents, your central power companies, and it's been that way for a long, long time. But we need to start decentralizing that significantly, because the central parties, the central bodies, the powers that be, there is little to no incentive for them to change. There really isn't. The horizons for these businesses are measured in decades, as long as possible. You build a massive power plant, you sit there and you just make money, and that's it. I don't have to move anything, I don't have to go anywhere, I don't have to be, efficient, yes, but I don't have to go out of my way to be better. So if we don't decentralize and disrupt and change or improve these systems, nothing's going to change. So yeah, decentralization is absolutely important for something like energy.
Thank you, Martin. And I'm interested to hear Meeta's perspective, given IBM is serving, a lot of the corporate space. So,
I personally think that it's not just the corporates or the enterprises that need to be decentralized, but it's humanity that needs help as well. When we are getting together, bringing the brightest minds together and building the next operating system of trust, when we are starting to build systems that gives us one vision of the truth, if you can think about it, any place where we had intermediaries, right, we can disrupt it. Think about getting money to the unbanked, identity to people who never had identity, preventing plastic from hitting our oceans, right? So those are things that, just at the surface of it come to mind. I do think blockchain is, we're starting our journey on blockchain, so there are different kinds of challenges that will come. I think we have such amazingly bright people globally looking at this problem. The biggest challenge is bringing people into the same room and having a conversation and saying, look, we really need to do this together. We were talking about this earlier, but bringing somebody who's worked for a 150-year-old company and somebody who's worked for a 100-year-old company, you bring these people together, they don't trust each other. It's very, very challenging to start that conversation, but it's amazing once that conversation really starts. So I think our biggest work will be spent on the human aspect of it, not the technology, in my opinion.
Thank you. I think the recurring theme is really, people feel like the central platform has somehow failed, right? In a way, it does achieve efficiency, but also people need to take back the control in terms of like ownership of their data, in terms of, and blockchain technology is what makes it possible, right? With the trust protocol that Dong has talked about, with the cryptography, with the P2P network and game theory. So it's definitely exciting times ahead. The next question I have for the panel is really, everyone is so excited about blockchain, whether it's from the startup space or whether it's from the corporates, across all the different verticals, people are embracing and spending money in terms of building R&D or trying to understand more about the use cases of this technology. And we do see there are many projects that have already successfully built working products. But if you go to DApp Radar, there's, even the most leading projects have less than 1,000 daily active users. So the big problem with blockchain technology, for one, as Meeta pointed out, is the understanding of it. For two, is really mass adoption. So I'm keen to hear from the panel here, what do you think are the biggest challenges? I think Meeta talked about the human elements of it, but if we can be more specific, like what are the things we should address subsequently to promote mass adoption?
So without a doubt, the numbers are quite small with respect to the Web 2.0 properties. There are hundreds, thousands of projects around the planet that are essentially foundational building blocks that people are working on and maturing, and they're getting used right now. So these are fungible token systems and non-fungible token systems and naming services and governance tools and accounting systems. And these technologies are being used by hundreds and in some case low thousands of people a day. Decentralized or atomic swap protocols, etc. We're going to see a lot of those technologies put together into more complex systems that are compelling to consumers. We're going to see this in the gaming industry, in the exchanges very, very soon. What we really do need is scalability, and there are many different game projects that are coming online now or coming online in early 2019 that are actually bringing their own scalability technology. So Ethereum is the trust infrastructure. It's a radically decentralized architecture, but state channels, which is being used in a couple projects right now, including Funfair, and side chains linked into Ethereum via technology called Plasma will enable hundreds or thousands of transactions per second at layer 2, the scalability layer, where those systems are linked into layer 1 for trust. So if something goes wrong on these systems, or if you just want to pull out your digital sword from one application and put it into another application or trade it onto an exchange, you'll be able to do that. So I think of the old world as sort of Ethereum 1.0, 1.5 will have layer 2 scalability, and we'll have real consumer applications built this year and next year. 2.0 is being worked on right now. It involves something called proof of stake and sharding that will enable the base layer, layer 1, to have essentially 1,000 to 5,000 different different Ethereum networks that are all kept consistent with one another.
Thanks, Joseph. I think you're basically saying the infrastructure layer needs to be addressed first because it has scalability impact.
And that was the case in 94, 95, 97, where lots of corporations liked the technology, but it wasn't scalable, it wasn't trustworthy, it wasn't private and confidential enough, and so they built intranet systems, and we're seeing many private blockchain systems in corporations and consortia, and as the technology matures, we'll see the movement to public blockchain.
Look forward to that day. I guess, so I think the key challenges, I don't know if anyone, any other panelists wants to share on this point?
I'll just add a little bit to that. Of course, the network layer and the trust layer has to be built. But what would really accelerate the uptake is if we can make the technology part simple to integrate with so that the masses can actually adapt. And that's what is going to change it, which is what it did for the web. So we need to be looking at building not just the framework, but also the tools so that anybody can actually participate in this decentralization.
You can also add for logistics and supply chain companies, obviously all of them are competitors. So bringing them together and sitting at the same table, looking at standards and recommendations for regulation is of course a challenge.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, I agree that the network layer and making it easy for people to use it and adopt it. And I think, but we see regulatory compliance. And I think there's an issue to be addressed in the skilling of the workforce as well. So I think all these things, when we start to have these together, I think we'll move to the next version of where we are headed. On gaming rights, my only bragging rights on gaming is my best friend is the lead developer for Fortnite. So I have to always mention it because my coolness factor with my children goes up through the roof whenever I say that.
I think two things are going to affect how the masses adopt the blockchain. First thing is going to be, I think blockchain's got to be forgotten. I think people need to use it without thinking about it. Like people use the internet now, they don't think that it's HTTP, it's whatever protocol. They don't think it, they just use it. So use case is important to the extent where blockchain disappears. It's the underlying infrastructure, but you don't have to think about it. And I think the second thing is to touch on the simplicity part, right? I think that the whole interface to that function's got to improve as well. The UX, UI has got to be changed. It's got to be upgraded. It's got to be more accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Because as a user myself, like dealing with all these different wallets and different exchanges, it's just a nightmare. And I think I fully agree with what the panel is saying, right? The challenges lies in one, technological challenges. We're going to have to address some of the fundamental technological challenges, such as scalability. For two, the human factor. Which is the understanding of it, the user experience part of it. And for three is really the regulatory, the governance, the auditing part of it, right? Because we are still at a very nascent stage of the industry. But I guess we're all in this for a reason because we're extremely optimistic about what this technology could do. Now, we talk about blockchain technology so much, but if we don't talk about digital token, it's like ignoring the elephant in the room. So I want to ask the panelists, question is, do you think digital token is necessary and why or why not?
Some organizations use distributed ledger technology inside an organization or within a consortium to essentially create a collaboration infrastructure. In those kinds of contexts, you don't really need a token. Sometimes it's valuable to have a token just for accounting purposes. You're sharing resources, basically. But the profound applications involve something called mechanism design or incentivized mechanism design, where you can define a set of goals and a set of rules, rules by which different actors in different roles can collaborate, work together on a network business model, on a protocol-based open platform, and emerge a product or a set of services, for instance, in the music industry, where you can have a platform to enable artists to directly access their consumers. So there are many of those that our company is working on and that many other companies in the space are working on, where the business logic of that network business model is embodied in the token. And so with respect to Ethereum, the token is Ether, the gas that fuels transactions and storage on the network. On top of that protocol-based open platform called Ethereum, you can build protocol-based open platforms for the music industry. On top of that, you can build a protocol-based open platform for ticketing, perhaps. And so as we look to move the value into these open platforms where we can openly participate, we can have layers and layers of nearly free or very inexpensive infrastructure that we can all share and build better collaborative systems. Very recently, Bill Hinman, Director of Corporate Finance at the SEC, indicated that they understood that you could issue a token. There would be a consumer utility token if it's architected properly, if it's marketed properly, so not in enormous quantities to speculators, if it's sold to people who are pledging or somewhat constrained to actually using it on the platform, so putting their money into the platform, but also their efforts in different roles, then they would see that as a non-investor token or not a security.
That's a very long answer. So do you think there should be digital token or there shouldn't be?
So many of them. So the beauty of these things is you can set up topical global villages that have a set of goals and funding mechanisms and mechanisms for governance to execute the project and achieve the goals. And so whether it's supporting a band or curing a disease, I think we'll need less reliance potentially on government to take care of those things, because people from around the world can come together and succeed in these kinds of projects, and they can be tokenized.
Got it. So it sounds like there will be utility value and the incentivizing value of token. Keen to hear Meeta.
Yeah, I mean, from an IBM perspective, you know, we don't have a point of view on cryptocurrencies, but we're definitely invested in tokens, whether it's tokenization of assets, be it gold or silver, or tokenization of land or properties, or incenting people. So I don't know if you've read on our work with Plastic Bank, and the idea behind that is we as a human race drive a truck full of plastic into the oceans every single minute of every single day. And Plastic Bank believes that cleaning oceans is good, but we should try to keep the plastic out of these oceans. And most of this plastic emerges from poor countries. So they've created centers where people can collect plastic, take it back, where Plastic Bank sorts it, cleans it, and turns it into social plastic and sells it to the likes of Marks and Spencer's, and then incents these people back with tokens, with which they can pay for their kids' tuition, buy cell phone minutes, buy groceries, etc. So if we look across the spectrum of these tokens, we're working. From a Singapore perspective and an IBM Research Center perspective, we are investing heavily into the token space. Yeah. And when you look at, you know, disintermediating the banks and reaching the unbanked, you know, tokens or some form of digitizing money becomes important. So we look at it from that perspective as well. So we are very interested.
Sounds good. And Martin, can you hear your view? Because your company has done fundraising through ICO if I remember correctly, last year, and was already this year was very successful. And keen to hear, how do you think digital token can actually help to incentivize different players on the platform you guys are building?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Digital tokens can be very important on our platform. We engage directly with consumers. One thing that we had an issue with in the early days before we were looking into blockchain solutions was the cost on every transaction itself. Running the transactions through a financial system, like through banks, credit card payments, and so on. This acronym keeps popping up, the MDR, the merchant discount rate. But that's the cost on every transaction. For a retail product, you're paying 2.5, 3+% on every product. In the energy space itself, we're looking at margins in single digits, low single digits. Hitting a charge of 2.5 to 3% is insane. So something like a digital token mechanism within our transactional platform, right, makes a lot of sense. Because within the platform we're designing now, we're moving on to the second project, which is the peer-to-peer energy trading platform across the main grid itself. We're looking to incentivize prosumers and consumers across the main grid to transact power between themselves. To do so with such thin margins, how's it going to make sense? So you've got to crash the cost of that transaction. So that's where the digital token comes in moving that value over different consumers, over the grid itself. So yeah, it's absolutely important for us.
Sounds great. And Soeren, do you have any?
Yeah, of course. We in BiTA have more than 450 members. So I can echo what we heard from Martin, that we see it drive behavior. And as the transaction fee, friction, costs are quite low. I think we will see refined and focused direction towards the desired behavior. And what is the desired behavior? The desired behavior is that the cargo is moved from A to B in a direct line, and all the cargo is there when it turns up, and the sender can issue an invoice very quickly. And that's the behavior we are seeing being driven with tokens.
Yeah, I think definitely there's a lot of debate among, tokens, what can be used to, security tokens, utility tokens, access tokens. But I think one thing people do agree is with tokens, you are able to incentivize a big community, a big crowd, and to align incentives, to align resources to, to grow a decentralized platform quickly. So I think we've got a couple of questions coming from Slido. So perhaps we'll just choose. Given we're talking about security token, how security tokens will change ownership as we know it?
I can take a crack at that. Specifically with respect to the real estate industry, security tokens have the potential to be quite transformative. So we have a project called Moderator, which has tokenized properties in the United States and looking to move more globally. You can create fractional ownership of a property that enables the owners to have more liquidity. So instead of perhaps taking a loan out and trying to make improvements, they can carve out, say, 10% of their property, tokenize it, and put it on the platform. That will give people around the world the opportunity to be exposed to an asset class that they may not previously be able to be exposed to. You could potentially put a small amount of money, $100, $1,000 in some cases, into that asset class. You can get much better price discovery if you have something that looks more like a stock exchange for real estate. You can have just greater democratization with respect to investing. So once you have a significant number of properties on tokenized and on an exchange, you have much better price discovery for the value of these different properties in different regions, and certainly they'll need to be categorized according to type and according to region, but one could imagine derivatives being built on top of that. One could imagine going short a certain region, a basket of properties in one part of town, and going long against that a different region. So I think it's going to create a very fluid real estate industry going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And the transaction cost will definitely be brought down as well, right?
Absolutely. It's a very broker-controlled industry.
Decentralization again.
But you also have another issue of there's new asset classes, the digital assets which are coming along. You have, for example, artificial intelligence. My data and the predictions I build from my data. That's an asset class. How do you otherwise bring it to the market? How do you monetize it? So there's a different class of security tokens which are going to be based on the data you produce, the actions you take, and how you monetize them. So that's something which is quite important, and we're going to see more and more of that.
Would you care to perhaps elaborate a bit more in terms of this new class of security token?
We talk a lot about our own data. We talk a lot about monetizing the data and not giving it away. Now, if you wrap that up into why do you need to monetize the data and how can you monetize the data is monetized by building models, building prediction models, which help various companies to kind of justify our preferences and kind of leverage the data to offer more products. Now, if you look at it, it's value, and it's a store of value. How do you monetize that value, and how do you actually securitize that value? And the tokens provide that either it's not a utility as such, but it's still a store of value, and that value is in your data and your actions. So you could securitize it in form of tokens. And the granularity is a lot smaller, which means that if you actually went out and tried to do that with a fiat currency, it will be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting perspective. So basically, through blockchain, you're able to create new asset classes. Yeah.
I wanna touch on that a little bit. I think something that we're gonna be very guilty about is we keep talking about securitization of tokens and so on and so forth, and we talk as if, you know, it's some sort of wealth management kind of a mechanism, I think. But you also got to bear in mind that there are many communities which are very disenfranchised, they're out of the banking system. Being able to put in mechanisms like this, just because these populations are out of the system, doesn't mean they don't have some form of localized wealth. They still have some land ownership, they still have some livestock, they own something. The system, because the system excludes them, they can't transact, they can't leverage, they can't scale, they can't grow, and they're always stuck in that same position generation after generation. Having blockchain being able to deliver this kind of movement of value, this storage of value, this tokenization of that kind of asset of value is going to be very important, helping them elevate and get out of that situation. I think that's going to be one very important use case for blockchain.
Thank you, Martin. I think that's definitely interesting perspective. That's also relevant to what Joseph was saying about liquidity, right?
Exactly.
Because of the illiquidity, so you have a lot of inefficiencies, and people are stuck with certain assets, or they don't have access to, you know, certain asset class because of the entry barrier. So yeah, definitely, you know, it's super exciting space to be in. Now, I don't know if we have time for one more question. I haven't seen a queue, so maybe we'll go for one more. This won't be interesting. Will emergence of decentralized infrastructure impact the ability of governments to prevent fraud and criminal behavior?
So that's an interesting question. So governance is a difficult thing in general, whether it's centralized governance or decentralized governance. Preventing fraud and criminal behavior could potentially be easier in systems that are natively digital, where you have natively digital money and natively digital identity and reputation and agreements legally enforceable and certificates. You can, in those systems, build regulation and compliance right into the logical infrastructure that supports your transactions. The interesting thing about blockchain is that it's giving us tools to do better voting and better decentralized governance systems, whether it's for one of these topical global villages that's focusing on a specific issue, or potentially at the level of a nation state. So we're excited. We have a project called GovernX that's exploring governance. But we've been thinking about this in the context of a project that we have going on in journalism, a project called Civil. So Civil is resulted from the realization that the journalism industry has become decimated over the last decade or so, where big newsrooms have shrunk by 50%, and local news around the world is again being decimated. I think in the United States, there were 500 cities that had 2 newspapers or more in 1900. Today, there are less than 10, and the small journalism houses are virtually being eradicated and replaced by corporate journalism. So this is a project. In order to get good governance, you need good information, and Civil is a project that's going live very, very soon. It's got a bunch of newsrooms that have charters that pledge. They put a bunch of money as a security bond on the system, and they pledge to uphold the Constitution, the Civil Constitution. So it's a project that is, we think of it as one of the most important things that we're involved with, and if anybody out there does believe that a revolution in journalism towards more sustainable and more ethical journalism is important, please check out Civil.
Sounds like ConsenSys has got a lot of projects in store. You guys are addressing definitely, every pillar of blockchain industry. I think for governance, that's interesting, right? From what I'm hearing is governance can be done, and probably even in a better way, just not the same way we're doing it today with a centralized governments or centralized agencies, right? But you can have rules around how do you govern in a decentralized way. If anything, from right now, all the activities, all the transactions will be actually put on blockchain, and that's actually transparent, that's traceable. I feel like if the government could actually understand this technology coming up with suitable governance, they can actually govern much better, right? So from IBM's perspective, Meeta, do you have anything to share with regards to governance?
So, we share that belief that with greater transparency and, immutability and verifiability that we are bringing in, we're definitely going to bring transparency to the system where things are going to get better. Joe, I think I'm excited about Civil as much as you are now hearing about it. So good luck and congratulations on that. I think there are two sides of the coin, right? When we talk about blockchain, the gift of blockchain to us was from Bitcoin, right? Microtransactions and we are a human race. We will figure out how to do bad even with the good. The chances of doing bad are now reduced because we have greater visibility and we are having a conversation. So I think that's important. When you look at Bitcoin and microtransactions, and the the dark marketplaces that are coming up because of that, will that continue to happen with that? I think they will, but I think we'll see more of the good come together. I think we will definitely bring more transparency, not just to journalism, but to what the governments are doing, what the charity organizations are doing, what the regulators are doing, and the regulators are looking at. And I think for that, the world will be better. So I really believe in that.
That's fantastic. I do have one last question. Given the recent, U.S. government approved a couple of stable coins, right? So this is the first time stable coin gets approved by a government. And that's interesting because previously all these currency issuance rights are given by a sovereign governance, right? Government entities. Now, having stable coin that's endorsed by our government and that's allowed to be circulated globally without border, how do you think that's going to impact, the existing world? What's the implication of that?
So the implication, Gemini, the Winklevoss brothers, and Paxos have added to the space of price stable tokens. These are tokens on the Ethereum blockchain that track the US dollar in value, and they're supposed to be stable in the face of any sort of volatility of Ether. There's another project called MakerDAI. They have a price stable token called the DAI, and it's done remarkably well. So these are part of those hundreds, thousands of little building blocks that we need in order to build more sophisticated applications to make compelling applications on blockchain for consumers and for business. They're not state-issued currencies. They're not, in a sense, replacing state-issued currencies, although at some point in the future, some people have speculated that these tokens will track a US dollar or a basket of currencies or a basket of commodities. And if more and more commerce moves into blockchains, they might end up being de facto or even more stable. So one could imagine US dollar or some other currency starts to have volatility due to economic or political conditions, and maybe that token might bump that state-issued currency from a basket or something like that. We have been engaged in discussions around the world with governments about using the same technology to move their own state-issued currencies into yet another technology. State-issued currencies have used hunks of metal and pieces of paper and entries in centralized databases, so it's absolutely expected that they'll start to use blockchain systems. It'll get very interesting if we have state-issued currencies issued directly into blockchain systems. We have a project called Adara that has built that infrastructure. It enables payments, cross-border, clear and settle in 10 seconds. It enables efficient treasury management within an organization. If central banks start to issue currencies into that sort of infrastructure, that will be transformational.
That's fantastic. I think whatever question I'm asking, ConsenSys has got a project working on that. So that's very, very exciting. And I want to, thank all the panelists. I think you're all pushing the frontiers, whether it's from enterprise government perspective, from a startup perspective, from a, across different verticals. It's definitely extremely exciting place to be in, and we shall wait to see what are the working product that's coming out of this, what are the progress that's we're making with regards to governance and all the infrastructure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.